General Cornwallis, Cheraw, and he's already met our fellow Brits, Stephanie Knowles. So anyway, thank you all for coming. A few things we have coming up this week. We have lunchtime music and art on the town green. This is part of our summer series, and so this Thursday we invite you to come from 11:30 to 1:30 on the town green. Buy a lunch from downtown or your favorite dining establishment, or pack a picnic. Bring a chair, bring a blanket, come and enjoy some music. Our Patrick will appreciate this. We have a young man from Furman University. He's a saxophonist, and he's playing some jazz music. He's from Hartsville, and so he's coming to play a little jazz on the green this Thursday from 11:30 to 1:30. And we have also enlisted some bands, because it is supposed to be hot. It is, summertime in Cheraw. But we encourage you to come and have some lunch, pop in, pop out. We will have this through September. And just follow us on Cheraw Arts Commission's Facebook page. You'll find out everything we've got going on. We also have coming up, we have June 15th through 19th. We have a camp for kids. It's art, music, and movement by educator Chris Hauser and Kimberly Rose, who's a yoga instructor. So they're going to be working on a community project and doing some music and movement. So that's this next week for kids 4th grade and up. Then we have June 25th. Laney Whiteman Rogers is going to be teaching us colonial dance. It's a precursor to our upcoming workshop in dance on June 27th. We have Mr. Steph Lively coming into town on June 27th at Kevin Lear's. And we will have a workshop that afternoon. Students can attend that, and we will also have adults who participate. It's from 1 to 3:30 p.m. at Kevin Lear's. Mr. Steph Lively will be guiding us in colonial dance. And we also have Simula. These are musicians who perform music of the period. And so that will be the afternoon at Kevin Lear's, and it's singles and couples are welcome. And then also that night we will have a ball. And this is all free because we were able to receive funding from South Carolina 250. The only thing we ask is that you call us and register so we can prepare refreshments and make sure we have adequate refreshments for our group. So that's June 27th. We also will, on June 28th, we'll be downtown on Town Green. We are partnering with Old Cheraw and the PDDAR, and we're going to have flags for purchase Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. at Centennial Park. They're $5 a piece, and what our plan is to have 250 flags at Centennial Park on the 250th. If you want to purchase some flags ahead of time, you can always call the Cheraw Arts Commission, and they'll certainly sell you some flags before the 28th. But we hope that we'll have a nice presence of flags down in Centennial Park. So that's all we have to say. But please keep up with the Cheraw Arts Commission on our Facebook page. And if you would like to receive our emails, we'll gladly take your information today and put you on our email list. So, yes.
I'm thinking that these historic people here would really appreciate the Sparkleberry tree.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
It's the oldest in the state. That state foresters are here regularly to check on it. And it's a beautiful trunk. It's kind of reddish brown, and it kind of curves around, and it blooms the 1st of May, and it sets on beautiful bell-like flowers, and then the berries are setting on them. You may be familiar with Sparkleberry.
Yes, and it is the oldest in the state, was what we've been told. Yes. So, and Sarah's school is here too. Sarah, thank you always for letting us have programs here. And Sarah, if you don't know about Old St. David, she's the caretaker of the building, and it's her passion, and she can certainly share some history about this. And I guess now we will welcome General Cornwallis to Cheraw officially.
himself so indecently. As you know, to show your elbows in public is a loose woman. 250 years ago, Claire and mine were no paved roads, no cars, no trains, no planes, no screens on the windows, no air conditioning, no central heating, no telephones, no cell phones, and no toilet paper. Folks, I want you to know that this story begins in Charleston. You see, Charleston was occupied by the rebels. And Joe Clinton decided he would take the British force down south, landing in Savannah, and then marching, or I should say, hiking, all the way to Charleston. There he besieged the city, took it by capture, and with the fall of Charleston, 2,500 Continental soldiers went into prison. The officers, of course, were paroled. After all, they're supposed to be gentlemen. But speaking of which, I noticed another thing. You treat your poor very poorly. I noticed that many of you do not have even a decent leather shoe. But sometimes all wrap around your feet. Let you know about my uniform. This is a dress attire. I'm wearing a solid, heavy wool coat. The buttons are gold. The sword is the sword of a gentleman, of which, being the second General Cornwallis, I am. Also, let you know that the shoes have buckles are gold and brass. I wear a wig because I shave my head and to prevent head lice. Also, let you know that I have a shirt that goes from my neck down to the mid-thigh. After 2 to 3 weeks, when it needs washing, I take it off and throw it again. With the capture of Charleston and in effect, the eradication of the rebel army in South Carolina, after the fall of Charleston, British garrisons were sent out, occupying Camden, Rocky Mount, Hanging Rock, and Cheraw. South Carolina was secure for the return of good government and no taxation to the economy. Look what you have today. Now, with that said, General Cornwallis, that's me, in command of the Southern District. And with the collapse of the rebel army, George Washington decided he would send Nathaniel Greene down to South Carolina with a new army in order to push us out. Now, bear in mind, there was a lot of rivalry in Congress. And it was decided, no, you are not going to send Nathaniel Greene. We're going to let you send Nathaniel Gates, the hero of Saratoga. And if truth be known, he didn't win Saratoga. It was Benedict Arnold that was the catalyst for winning that particular battle. So Nathaniel Greene decided it's on the way down to Charlotte, North Carolina. On the way, he picks up 2 regiments, one from Delaware, one from Maryland. Well, why didn't he get to North Carolina and the Virginia Ridge? Because they were captured in Charleston. They can't participate because they're not there. So he decides to call his army the Grand Army. And he puts the calls out and he collects militia from Virginia and North Carolina. Now let me explain to you what a militiaman is. fireplace. And that's your heat as well. And of course, it requires a great amount of wood. That means you, sir, need chops of wood. Now, I want you to know that women, their position in life, everything that pertains to inside of the house. He is responsible for everything outside of the house. Now, with that said, when the militiaman is called to duty, that puts a terrible strain on her. Because now not only does she have her duties to perform, but his as well. Now, the best time to call up a militiaman, of course, is when crops in the field have been planted and you're waiting for them to grow. That means you have time on your hands in order to go out and carry a weapon and fight. Now, Nathaniel Gates collects his militia from 2500. That's a good size militia. Now, remember, 250 years ago, an army size depends on its logistics. How are you going to feed them? How are you going to clothe them? How are you going to give them weapons? How are you going to do all this? So your quartermaster has a problem. How to feed this mob, plus the 2 units from Delaware and Maryland. And by the way, these 2 units, they are first-class soldiers. They're top notch. They are tough veterans. Now, Nathaniel says, I need to go down to Camden. And when I get to Camden, I will capture the place. And then I'll go over to Charleston and drive to the British Isles. It's eating for a surprise. When he gets to Charlotte, he is joined by the militia from Virginia and again North Carolina. And it is decided that he will march his army to Camden. The difficulty is 2 routes. One takes a direct route straight from Charlotte to Camden. Those of you who are not educated, Camden's about 50 miles from here. You would say. Now, with that said, the other route is to go south and then swerve around and come at Camden from the south. Now, the difficulty of going straight from Charlotte to Camden is that it is poor country, sandy, poor farms, and the people, bless their hearts, are loyalists. And staff says, General, don't make a straight shot down to Camden. There's nothing here for you. You'll find it difficult to be in your army. Now, Nathaniel, if anything, he was hard-headed. No, I will not go around. I will take the direct route. I will go straight to Camden. Well, when he finally got close to Camden, by going straight through the Royalist controlled area, the men were hungry. They were tired. They had been forced marched from Charlotte down towards Camden. Now, I'm in Charleston, wrapping things up, and I decide it's best for me to get on down to Camden, which I arrived on the 14th of August. Now, if you were not familiar with August in Camden, let me tell you in one word, it's brutal. Imagine running around dressed like this. When he got down close to Camden, I got word that he was on his way. Lord Walden, the commander of the garrison at Camden, decided it's time to draw people back to Camden. And that's what he did. He ordered the garrisons that had been skirmishing from, like I said earlier, Cheraw, Hanging Rock, Rocky Mountain. And then he concentrated them in Camden. About 2 2,000. And you say, that's not very big. It was 250 years ago. Remember I told you, you can only have an army size if you can feed them. If you can't feed them, then you're useless lions. And let me tell you, soldiers like to eat. Now, with that said, I decided to get myself on down camping, which I arrived on the 14th of August. And I said, we have a problem. The most I can gather is about 2,000. He is coming down, I told he has 4,000. Probably more closer to 3 than 4. But they're not active, but more than half of his army are militia. Untrained, untested, brand new, green, very susceptible. Now, many of my soldiers are incapacitated. Incapacitated? Yes. I told you about the heat of August. Our local hospitals, which in those days is not really a hospital as you think of it, but more or less a room available as one of the buildings in Camden. I put the word out, if you can stand and carry a musket, you're going to be into the field. That's how I was able to muster 2,000. Now, to let you understand, the weaponry of 250 years ago, carried by the British soldier, was the brown vest musket. Musket, not rifle. Which means the inside of the barrel is as smooth as the outside. To fire this piece, it requires 3 component parts. You need a good wooden stock, you need a barrel, and you need a lock. Hence, when you get something in its entirety, make sure you get lock, stock, and barrel. Now, folks, not only is it British musket, a musket not a rifle, it also carries an 18-inch bayonet with a little point end to it. Now, not only does it carry a musket and bayonet, he also has to have a cartridge box. Now that means you got one white band, like I have, across the shoulder to carry your sword or bayonet. Another broad white strip carries your ammo pouch, creating an X. Now if you're wounded in battle, that means you were in pain. Chances of your survival is slim. So slim, in fact, that before battle, a soldier would say, cross my heart and hope to die. Meaning, don't wound me, or I'll have a painful lingering death. Go ahead and kill him. Get over it. Yes, like I said, cross my heart. Remember that expression? Now you know. Also, besides that, a soldier was awarded or given 7 clothes once a year. So make sure you're around the quarterbacks at the time you're clothing, because within a year's time, it's all about coming to rags. Oh, speaking of which, did you know that George Washington sent all the women in his camp away because he couldn't pay them? What do you mean pay them? Women did the laundry. It was beneath a man to do laundry. So if it's something he's washing, he wouldn't want you to have it. I wanted to do it, but that was beneath him. Times have changed. Now Nathaniel, he proceeds on down towards Camden and stops within a couple miles of the city. Actually, more like a large village. And he decides this is where he will meet any of the British resistance. Actually, we really don't know what he was thinking. We can only surmise what he was thinking, because he didn't tell anybody. What he decided to do was to occupy a ridge on the southern side of Saunders Street. The only place you could cross Saunders Street was at a ford. A ford is a place where the water is narrow enough or shallow enough for you to get to the other side. Each end of the crossing was a swamp, which meant that anybody coming in would be funneled through that gap in the creek. Now I decide the best way to hit gates is the first thing in the morning. That means about 10 o'clock, I have a muster of all my troops, and we begin to move out towards Gates. Now, Gates made a serious mistake before any engagement. Remember I told you the troops were hungry? He found a nice supply of green corn and molasses. Now, if you're not familiar with that effect, let me tell you, it has the most deleterious effect on the human body. It was so bad that many of the soldiers took off their trousers, threw it over their shoulder, and when Mother Nature called, stepped out of line and relieved themselves. Repeatedly. Now, we have two situations. One, you have a debilitated force on the gates. Two, my army is suffering from heat. With sunstroke, heat stroke, fever, mosquitoes. They didn't know about what caused malaria and others. And also, sanitation is not what you consider very appealing. Remember now, the only thing you would wash were your hands and your face. Bathing is unhealthy. You could catch the death of the miasma or the bad humors. You say, ew. Now on to the Bible itself. Gates decided he will move out in the middle of the night and attack Cannon. I decide I'm going to attack him, moving out in the middle of the night. Now imagine two forces coming together. Neither side knows where the other is. We think we know where they are. On both sides, but not sure. So I sent out ahead of me what you would call scouts to recon the area. Find out what's across Saunders Street. The Daniel Gates decided to send out a patrol in front of his marching army to find out what he's in store for. About 2 in the morning, these two groups came together and started shooting. Finally, after about 5-10 minutes, they stopped shooting. Because remember I told you about the brown best musket? If you can't see the load, you can't shoot. In order to load a musket, you have to cock it. That's why you always tell them, honey, don't go running off that cock. You ever heard that expression? You ever been told that? No. Then you open the pan, you pour in live powder, you close the pan, pour the rest down the barrel, then drop the ball. You don't need a ramrod. It's smooth, it goes straight down. So if you're pointing down, then you put wine into the barrel so the bullet doesn't come rolling out. If you're pointing it up, you're okay, you don't need one. Speaking of which, in order to find the musket, you must have at least 2 opposing teeth. One up, one down. Now, for those of you who've been in the Marine Corps, that is so that you can bite this cartridge without all in one tooth. You're no good. You stay healthy. By the way, where do Marines fight? Any sailors here? Any Navy people? They fly in the yard on every ship. Pointing down, so that's why they can't fire as fast as a soldier. You see, a trained soldier can fire a musket 3 to 4 times a minute. Awesome firepower. You'll never get anything shooting any faster. Now, as these two forces collided, they backed off. Yates decided he would go ahead and place his force on the line. That means he brings up the men shoulder to shoulder, waiting for daylight. I, on the other hand, am caught on the other side of Summer Street with my force. But as soon as it begins to get light, I decide to deploy from column into line. But what I mean by that is a column, it's like single file, 4 men abreast. In order to go from column to line takes time. Units have to peel off according to their position. Now, Nathaniel Gates, prior to the American War of Independence, during the War for American Independence, now, the forces waited until it became light enough to see what you're doing. In the British Army, the best unit, the most important unit is on your right. And then the next, all the way down to the bottom. Remember I told you that Nathaniel Gates had been a major in the British Army. He is familiar with this lineup. So he places on his right the Delaware and the Maryland Continentals. On his left, he puts the militia, all 2,500. Now, before the battle, you can just hear them talk. We're going to suck it too. We're going to shell and walk forward. We're going to send that ship back there as fast as we can send. We're going to move. Now, here we go. Gates has his army lined up on a lights ridge facing Saunders Creek. I'm in column. I start to move my unit forward when Gates decides to open up with artillery, 3 and 6 pounders. Now, no solid shot, round shot, cannonballs have been found at Canada. What they have found are 1.5 to 1.25 little iron pellets that artillery became like to use shotguns. And it fired first hitting the 33rd Regiment. Remember now I told you importance? The 33rd was very important. Now, I have on my right, as I start to deploy, on the right is the 23rd, the 33rd, and on my left, I have the 71st Island Regiment, I have Carlson's infantry, I have the Sons of Ireland. Now, bear in mind that as we line up, firing at some distance, it is decided to give them the bayonet. Now, here's why this decision. Remember I told you your best units are on the right, your lesser are on the left. When I deployed my unit, my right is facing militia. My left has got some strong units. Fix bayonets. Right on the line. Charge with bayonets. They'll come down 900. Who's up? Poor fellow. You don't have a bayonet. You're looking across this field and you see 900 bayonets come straight forward. you, not him, you. The militia says, I'm out of here. And in a panic, many of them throw down what weapons they have and skedaddle, running as fast as they can go, dropping off anything and everything that would detain them. With the loss of his left wing, oh, I forgot to tell you. Remember Nathaniel? When the militia broke and ran for the rear, he went with them. 3 days later, he arrived at Hillsborough, North Carolina, to announce the defeat of his army. He's the only general I know of in history who brought the news first of his own defeat. The man was there. He says, well, this is going to reorganize the army. No, I can do that. You didn't have a lodge. Now, folks, with his loss, the Continentals found themselves without a general. So command devolved upon Baron de Gaulle. What he did next was to pull some of the North Carolina militia, which did not run, along with the 1st Delaware. And he refused the flank. In other words, he turned part of this front line sideways, so that facing what comes after. Because remember, with the departure of the militia, my right wing now swings like a giant door. And now the Continentals have a problem. Because the gap has been opened between the Maryland and the Delaware regiments. Because when they moved south, they left an opening of some 200 yards, 2 football fields. I noticed this. Now's the time to send in the cavalry. Charles. And he did. He came swarming through that opening, and now the Continentals have a problem. Not only have they got forces to their front, to their side, now to their rear. That was a problem which I enjoyed. Because that meant after 15 minutes, the battle was over. From start to finish, only about 45 minutes. Just to give you an example of the result, out of Delaware Regiment, 3 light colonels, 2 majors, 15 captains, 34 musicians, 2 staff officers, and 771 rank and file taken prison. Is that right? And it said that I did not just defeat the rebel army, I annihilated it. You say, well, what became of the wounded? They were carried back to Camden and given what medical care we could provide. One individual did not make it, Baron Cat. He received 11 bayonet wounds and bullet wounds. I had him taken back to my headquarters. I had my own physician look after him. And he was not played. He was doing enough out of his own. 3 days later, he died. Now, he was a Mason. I am a Mason. Which means I gave strict orders that he was to be buried with full Masonic rites. Yes, we fought. But yes, we're Masonic brothers. That's why. Oh, the cab is buried in Camden. He was buried outside the walls of the city. Then he was Zoom and moved to the First Presbyterian Church in downtown Camden. And I think now he's been removed again a third time before I left. Way on Historical Park in Camden. Good man. He's the man. The best.
He stood for Presbyterian. He stood for Presbyterian. They opened the Revolutionary Park, but he still
He was there for the longest time. By the way, 250 years in the future, your time. I think about 2 years ago, they were doing archaeological work on the battlefield of Camden. They found 4 bodies. 4. 2 British, 2 were dead. The British, one was from the 71st Highland Regiment, the other was a Catawba Indian. On the rebel side, there was one fellow who was 14 years old, and the other one was in his 40s. Big gap. We don't know if they were continentals or whether it's a region of the fact. After the battle, it became imperative to get these bodies in the ground. You know why? Heat makes bodies expand, explode, smell. So I had some of the prisoners have put them to work, digging graves in order to interment these people. And I dare say the majority were left where they fell. Why? Simple reason. I couldn't stay around Camden. I took my army and left and went and chased what was left of the Continental Army. Even went so far as Cheraw. Now, one of the wounded and all I told you, they were taken care of as best we could. Also, many of the bodies, it gets hot. And you're on detail. Are you going to take your time to dig a 6-foot grave for an individual you don't care for? No. You could just throw some dirt over and keep going. My guess, many of them became victims of animals. In fact, we found 4 bodies in and of itself is remarkable. Any questions about the Bible? No questions? You ready to go back to the 18th century and enjoy your life there? You wouldn't make it.
No, but I want to add, because the 71st Highland was troops that were stationed here. So when they went from here to Camden.
Let you know there is a township in Cumberland County, North Carolina, named 71st Township, named after the 71st Highland Regiment. Because that area is a whole lot of Scots. A lot of Scots. Well, I'll talk to you now about life in the 18th century. I can talk to you about the battle. It was a very significant fight. It was about the Navy Wings Act. It removes Yates from trying to become the commander of all the Continental armies, replacing Washington. And I should know that because of that battle, Green decided no direct conflict, but to stay ahead of me. I gave chase in what's known as the race to the Dan River. And because of that, and I could not catch him, we finally fought it out at Guilford Courthouse in March 1781. Then I won that battle, but I lost a fourth of my force to killed and wounded. Down to Wilmington, refurbished, marched to Yorktown. We don't need to go there. Well, folks, that covers it pretty much about what happened back then. Let you know that being wounded and survived, and it's not necessarily a good thing. For this man back there in the yellow shirt, as a blacksmith without 2 arms, he can't do his work. If you only have 1 arm, you can't chop wood very well. If you have 1 leg, your life is on crutches. If you have no 2 legs, then you've got a real problem. Sometimes I think, yeah, there's no restaurants, there's no retirement centers. You work till you drop. I don't care how old you are. Remember I told you the mean average age of a man is what? 34. And by the way, girls, when you were 13, you probably got married. Now, ladies, I want to ask a question. Raise your hands. Raise your hand, please, girls. That's you. Raise your hand. I want to ask some questions. If you have a son, one child, drop your hand. All you have is 1. You got at least 1, 2, 3, 4 children. What's the problem here? You get married at age 13, it's nothing unusual for you to be pregnant, same time as your daughter. Having 15 or 20 children is commonplace. Why so many children? You need hands to do the work to survive. Out of your 20 children, you're happy at 5 to make it to adulthood. Why such high infancy rate? Disease, poor nutrition, accidents. He lost his arm because he cut himself. He got infected. All kinds of reasons why you can become incapacitated. And people back then tended to work together in order to make something to make it go. With that said, I thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain you. Yes, sir.
Access for the horses or everything. Look, access to horses, everything on foot, as far as moving A to B.
Well, I'll give you an example of a soldier in the British Army. Starting at Savannah, he walked to Charleston. He walked to Camden. He walked to Cheraw. He walked to Guilford Courthouse. He walked down to Wilmington. He walked to Yorktown. Remember I told you? No buses, no trains, no cars. You get somewhere, you do like Chance Mayer. Your feet, you walk. If you have a horse, you're either in the cavalry or an officer. I'm entitled to have a vacuum which helps dress me and undress me. If you don't have that, then you're on your own. Especially the soldiers, they were tough. I can't put it in there, they were tough. I know at the Battle of Cheraw, and across the river, and it wasn't across, it was a bluff. On top of the bluff, they were shooting down at us. We crossed that river just cold in the middle of the night. It was January. Climbed the cliff and fought the locals and sent the scurry. Now that's tough. That's hardcore. I wouldn't want to do it even today. I call it here and there first. Folks, thank you very much. If you have any other questions.
I think one of the interesting things, in fact, you mentioned that in March they hiked.
Yes.
And when you think that in fact they hiked from Camden to Cheraw, whoever those are on the highway one from those days, they did it in a day. And the thing that in fact fascinated me, the history that we was in fact the physician that they had with the doctor they had. He in fact walked then from here up to Virginia, then he walked down, and eventually he wanted to complete his medical background, so he walked up remarkable, it really is. But, I think if anybody wants to look at what happened in 71st Rising Islanders, my wife put it all outside there, it's on the plaque just as you're going out to the right hand side. Well worth reading. We had a lot of fun doing it. We started off very badly because we started off thinking, in fact, it was a name that, in fact, an officer buried here. We had friends from London. We asked them to check it out at the War Museum in London. He invoiced us back, emailed us back. About 3 weeks later to say, I'm sorry, but you got it wrong. He's not buried in Cheraw, he's buried in Westminster Abbey. And in fact, he went from Cheraw up to Virginia, then he went to become the governor of Bermuda, and then became the governor of Jamaica, and then he retired. That's why he's buried there. But it was a fascinating period. I think the thing that amused me as much as anything else was the fact that as you read the history, you would get somebody writing something who he remembered as being a child, taken by his father and shown the graves of the people there in Cheraw, and was told all about it. And of course, he's now writing it, forgetting the fact, when he was 4 and told about it, his father covered it up to make it interesting for this 4-year-old child. But he's now pushing it forward. And, the whole thing again fascinating, it really is. We never found the name, by the way. We never managed to find it.
To let you know about my own family, my earliest ancestor came from the Isle of Cheraw, Scotland, in 1747. And my family's been there ever since. But anybody here of Scottish descent? Not sure.
So, Lord Cornwallis, would you like to tell us just a tiny bit about what happened to you after you left?
Do I have to go to Yorktown again?
No. I'm talking about when you left the country.
After everything, I returned to Ireland, my estate. I was then allowed to go to become the Governor General in India, where I did some outstanding work bringing that subcontinent under British control.
So you
I will
actually
let you know.
ended up with Hero Bridge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And General Clinton was the antithesis. He fell out of grace real quick. I will share with you, have you ever heard of something in Boston called the Tea Party? Let me tell you about the Boston Tea Party. The East India Company was what made them. They had warehouses full of tea. Now, remember right before the American War for Independence, there was another war called the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War. Britain went into debt, 54 million pounds. Yours weight of money, that would probably be close to about 500 million. That's probably on the low side. Now the debt has to be paid. The British government needs money. So it decides what it will do is to take tea from the East India Company, send it to America. Now folks, this was the golden age of smuggling. Individuals were getting filthy rich. You ever heard of someone called John Hancock? He's one of the biggest smugglers in Massachusetts. So if we send the tea to America, we can tax it and create revenue to pay off that debt. The difficulty was the taxed tea was cheaper than the smuggled tea. Now, if you want to get rid of your competition, you decide to get rid of your competition. And that's what the smugglers did. They dressed up like Indians. And they went over and they threw the box of tea into the harbor. Now, you could just have worth of your income thrown into the fund. What do you think you should do? Well, I'll tell you what happened. They called on the British government to send troops to collect the debt that Boston had just destroyed the tea. Not taxation to remove the 54 million debt, but the cost of the tea. And as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story.
How old were you at the time you were?
Oh, I was ancient. You see, right now you look at me, I'm only 286 years old. Not bad for that. I was about 36. Remember that was the worst. I was a little bit. Folks, thank you very much.